You ever notice how nobody makes movies about the people who have it all together, at least initially? Nobody gathers around to hear the story of someone who had every advantage, every resource, every reason to succeed, and then voila, they succeeded, right? Like that sounds kind of boring. But of course not. We love hearing about the underdog. We love the story of the underdog. We love a good comeback story. We love to learn more about the person who was underestimated, overlooked, counted out, and somehow found a way to make it through. And maybe that's because most of us have felt like the underdog at some point in our lives. Maybe your dream seems bigger than the opportunities around you. Maybe your timeline doesn't look like everyone else's. Maybe you've been overlooked because your potential just didn't match the unrealistic expectations that others have set out for you. Well, today, I want to make the case for something. What if being the underdog is actually one of the greatest advantages that you can have? So let's talk about the magic that comes from being counted out and making it anyway. So yes, welcome to the Main Lore podcast. I am your host, Laura, and this is episode 38. And yes, I know, I've been a little MIA because I've been pretty busy traveling. There's some projects that I'm working on. So your girl's been busy, unfortunately. But we do have 2 more episodes left before we wrap up season 2. So I'm pretty excited about that. And I know time absolutely flies by, doesn't it? So anyway, let's get back to talking about being the underdog. When you're expected to win, there's this immense pressure to have it all together, to maintain your reputation, and to meet the expectations that other people have for you. But there's this insurmountable pressure not to fail. But when you're the underdog, guess what happens? You're actually free from all of that. You can start from zero. You are the person that nobody's really looking at. You are like the loser. I hate to say it that way, right? Like you're the person nobody cares about. You're no competition. Who the hell are you? Nobody expects perfection. Nobody expects immediate success out of you because on the outside, it looks like you have a long way to go. You have a lot to learn in a short amount of time. And that may look like it's something impossible to achieve. So think of the people who immediately upon meeting you, especially when you go out networking, and the first thing that they like to ask is, what do you do? Where did you go to school? And the truth is that most of the times they're really trying to size you up to see whether or not you may be someone who either has something that they need or can use, or you could potentially have an advantage over them. And if you don't, then you could consider yourself to be the underdog. So psychologists call this the underdog effect. And research says that people who perceive themselves as having less power often become more resourceful, they are persistent, and even creative because they have less to lose and more to gain. They have more to prove to everyone else, or even themselves. The underdog isn't protecting their legacy. They are essentially building one, oftentimes from scratch. It's like, making a cake. You're missing ingredients, but somehow still turns out amazing. And so there's this tremendous amount of freedom in that. Nobody is expecting perfection. They're just letting you get by because in the end, who cares? You're just here to get through. But when things don't come easily for you, you learn things that you would probably overlook if you were the top of your class, the employee of the month, the top performer. You learn how to be patient until you get the results you want. You learn how to stay resilient by dealing with the challenges that come your way. And you also learn how to adapt whenever there is a need to shift gears because things didn't turn out the way you planned. You learn how to solve problems because you're just, you're not a quitter. You're trying to prove yourself. Remember, you're the underdog. And as the old saying goes, when you're the underdog, you always have a dog in the fight. So people who have always had advantages as a result sometimes do struggle when things don't go according to plan because they're used to not having to work as hard for things. So, yes, someone is always there to save them from failing or saving them from themselves. And you could think of the show Succession, right? Like where the dad was always saving his kids because of like, oh God, who's going to take over the company? And so he always had to make sure that they were all going on the right path. But anyway, it's a great show. So underdogs, however, on the contrary, are practically professional problem solvers. Life has already trained them how to pivot. And adaptability, believe it or not, is one of the most valuable skills that you can have because, as you know, life is unpredictable. And the more that you are able to ebb and flow with the changes that come with it, the easier your life will become. So underdogs understand that the win may not come today, it may not come tomorrow or next week, but in their mind, it is inevitable. And that's how you have to look at your progress. It's inevitable. Whether it happens today, tomorrow, in a year, who knows? The point is that it's going to happen eventually. Now, this doesn't mean that you need to go out there and prove your worth to Tom, Dick, and Harry. You don't. Your worth is already established. Because remember, at the Mandalore podcast, we talk about how your worth comes from within. So you determine your own sense of worth. But there's something powerful about having a vision that no one else can see yet. When you're the underdog, you often develop a level of focus that comes from the belief that by learning consistently, by practicing more, by staying committed, that consistency becomes difficult to compete with over time when you compare it to those who feel like they've already arrived. They already know what to do. They know everything. They have every answer. When you get a little bit too comfortable, sometimes you get the rug pulled out from under you. And this can happen when you think of the economy, when you think of the industry that you're working in, advances in technology, when you think of your health. Nothing is ever constant. And so you always have to get used to learning, to prepare for whatever comes, to practice more, to always stay one step ahead. And that's something that underdogs are very good at. And the underdog knows to never get too comfortable. So they're always looking for the next problem to solve. The other interesting thing about being the underdog is that nobody's watching you 24/7. Nobody's analyzing your every move because, again, you're not somebody who is threatening to anyone. You're not someone who is trying to take someone's job. Nobody sees you in that way. You're just someone who is there to learn what it is that you need to learn because you probably don't know anything. That's the assumption that people have of you when you're the underdog. Nobody is expecting greatness out of you, which means that you get to quietly improve and learn and grow. Until one day, people look at you and say, hey, well, what did all this come from? When did you get to achieve all of this? When, I had no idea that you knew how to do this or that, right? Meanwhile, you've been quietly building yourself up. And that's why the world loves an overnight success story. And what the world often misses from that is that invisible effort that came beforehand. What are some good underdog stories? One that I really love is if you've ever watched the movie The Devil Wears Prada, and there's this girl named Andy who is a recent college grad, and she applies to this, runway magazine, and she's supposed to be the assistant of Miranda. And if you're very familiar with, there's a book and then there's a movie. Of course, Miranda is very difficult to work with, right? Like nobody wants to work for her. Everybody who becomes her assistant ends up quitting. But for some reason, Andy ends up doing everything. Even if she fails, she somehow tries to find a solution for Miranda. And as a result, Miranda ends up respecting her because, one, she stuck it out. Andy decided to be the problem solver. She always figured out a way to make things work for Miranda. And that's why Miranda eventually ended up, kind of even taking her on as her daughter. That's how it felt like to me anyway. But anyway, I love The Devil Wears Prada. And then there's another story about Joan of Arc. When you think of Joan of Arc, she was this poor teenage girl who ended up becoming the commander of this great French army. And she ended up taking them on to battle, which changed the course of the 100 Years' War. So she was an absolute underdog. Now, one of the stories that I absolutely love that just happened recently, the Knicks basketball team, the New York team. And for years, the Knicks fans have endured disappointment and setbacks and criticism. And they've been a butt of all the jokes, 53 some years that they have not won a championship. So everybody was like, "Yeah, this is never going to happen." Whatever, So many people stopped expecting greatness from the Knicks. They were pretty close at some point, with especially in the 90s. But many people assumed the best days were really behind them. No matter how hard they tried, they just couldn't get there. And yet, season after season, fans kept believing, the players kept showing up, and the organization, they kept trying to rebuild the team. And that's what being an underdog is, right? They don't always control the timeline of when things happen, but they know that it's coming eventually. They keep believing in the dream, until everyone else catches on. The momentum starts to shift towards them. And eventually, even towards the end, they came back. The Spurs were winning by 29 points. Somehow they made it through, won the game. And after that, it was something that was, as somebody who was raised in New York City, I never thought I would see the day, but it was absolutely wonderful to see how that happened. It was a surreal moment for New York City for sure. But you can also say this about their mayor, right? The mayor of New York City, Mayor Mandani, he has also had his own underdog story by defeating much more established politicians in the city. And somehow, some way, he ended up becoming the new mayor. So again, there are so many stories out there. No matter the industry that you work in, your story, there's always a story out there where you can find inspiration from. Which leads me to tell you that if you're currently the underdog, don't stop believing, because something is definitely in the air. And dare I say, this is the year, I think, of the underdog. This is where all the underdogs are just coming out of nowhere and they're still managing to get through. So the underdogs are winning. Okay, they're achieving what they set out to achieve, and they are proving that no challenge is ever too great. So don't ever set yourself up for disappointment, thinking that nothing is ever going to happen, that you're never going to achieve something. Believe that you can get it. All you need is a little imagination, a little bit of dreaming, and you're halfway there, okay? So if you've ever felt like you're behind, if you ever felt like you're being overlooked, if you've ever wondered why things just seem easier for everyone else somehow, remember this. The underdog story is rarely ever glamorous. It is often uncomfortable and daunting and exhausting, okay? And it's full of moments where nobody sees the effort that you're putting unless the results come with it. But those same conditions often create extraordinary people. They often create extraordinary stories. So maybe stop asking yourself, well, why am I the underdog? Why me, right? Why am I always at a disadvantage? Instead, think of it as, what is this season? What is this teaching me right now? What am I gaining from this experience? And one day, someone may look at your life and say, oh, wow, you're so lucky. Lucky you. Look at you, all the things that you've achieved. Look at how wonderful you're doing. As an underdog, you're going to smile and you're going to remember all those days when you were hard at work, when you were losing sleep, when you were doing the impossible to make things work, even when nobody believed it was possible, including you. Because I can hear... Okay, I can't hear anything, but I can hear the doubt in your mind right now. So this is your reminder to keep building, keep believing in yourself, keep showing up every single day. You deserve to put effort into yourself, your goals, your dreams. Let people count you out, no matter what. Let people underestimate you, because sometimes it is the greatest head start you'll ever get. So this week, I want you to think of a time when you felt like the underdog. And what exactly did you learn from that experience? How can you take that experience and use it to elevate you into the next level? We all have an underdog story. It could be big, it could be small, it doesn't matter. The key is to be proud of how far you've come because you deserve it. All right. Thank you for listening to the Minilar podcast. I am so happy to celebrate with you. If, again, my underdogs, if you're listening to this podcast, I guarantee you probably have an underdog story because essentially this is what the podcast is about, not counting yourself out and always believing in yourself. So share this with someone you think has underdog energy and also send them a little encouragement. Thank you again. Until next time, take care of yourself. Bye.